clock is up. I'm not sure whether the clock is right,
yeah.
but yes, we are looking. We need a bit more time.
It's right for something.
Or maybe this is just for questions. So as Sandra mentioned, we wanted to stick to the program, but if you have any questions to the keynote speech, we will take them now. I checked, there is nothing in workshop yet. If there are any questions from the audience? No? So we will then continue. I will be taking questions as we go along. And I hope you will have questions, because I have a lot of questions as well. And I hope that our audience online will also participate and ask everything. And Sandra took my joke this morning about the wedding. So you see, you have to still show up to your own wedding in Estonia. But interestingly enough, in Estonia, almost now, I think 100% of services can be provided online. You can vote online, you can pay taxes online. But what you can also do is you can live in Estonia online. The e-residency program of Estonia now, altogether, it could be a second largest city in the country after Tallinn. So they have more than 100,000 people all over the world who benefit from the online services of Estonia without being in Estonia. So Estonia is a magical country. You don't even have to be here to live in Estonia. And, but if you think about it, and Sandra, please correct me, but this is a statistic that I found, that the digital transformation in Estonia is saving 216 hours per year for each citizen. Those of you who are not good with math, like myself, I had to calculate it. It's 9 working days. So if you think about, you save 10 days or 2 working weeks, almost 2 working weeks a year, thanks to the digital services provided in the country. And I'm not Estonian, but I have all the Estonians, so today we have a panel to find out how does it actually work in practice. So Sandra, my first question to you, and as you mentioned, that now you're looking into building a digital state for companies. But what have you learned in the past 20 years about building this state for citizens, and what will you be taking forward with you, and what maybe you will not be taking with you? What will you going to leave behind, something that you have learned?
Great questions. Just you've hyped Estonia so much, so again, I have to come back to the weather. I'm happy the weather is so crappy, otherwise people wouldn't believe that it's a country that actually exists. And as regards to getting married, when the service was live at 30th of December, I was sitting, holding my laptop, logging on to sd.ee to see how this process works, and my boyfriend was sitting next to me. And I was like, oh, okay, marriage proposal, you can do it. And he was, what are you doing? He's still old-fashioned, he thinks he should propose, but if it takes too long, then I can just use the e-service. But you know, going to build digital services for the businesses, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've had those services already. Estonia has the most tax competitive country in the world. Estonia and Latvia, every now and then, who takes first and second place, or in the OECD. But you know, the thing is, when you build digital services for an individual as a government, you are the only service provider in the world. Because as an individual, unless you move countries, your government is the only government that can offer you services, as opposed to when you use private sector services. You know, you don't like McDonald's, you go to Burger King. You don't like Selver, you go to Prisma. You don't like Apple. I actually don't like Apple. This is a glitch in the matrix. You switch to Android. So all of these things, you can switch your service provider. But if you're the government, you can get really lazy because you know that your citizens cannot choose what to use, right? So when we build the services for businesses, my #1 requirement is that in all of these processes, we include the businesses so they can tell us what they actually need, what they actually want. And there was a disaster actually last week. At the EU level, they adopted a new directive. It's a CSTD directive, Corporate Sustainability Reporting something. And it has over 900 rows of information that big stock market companies now will have to start sharing with the government on human rights and sustainability in their supply chain. Over 900 rows of data that you're going to have to share. Because those officials who were sitting in the room when they figured out, they never included the companies. This is not okay. So how we do things in the Estonian government, how we do things in my team, is we always include companies in the processes when we build those things. So I think this is the absolute key dynamic, because as a government you can get really lazy because your customers, your consumers cannot choose who they turn to in order to get services.
And I know that Estonia, so for me, I remember when I was checking the website of the WTO, and there are all the list of all the missions, and I was really impressed, not only that the Estonian mission to the WTO has a picture of our office, which is next door, so the building Moderator that has been just being built, so the beautiful picture of the Wall Street of Tallinn, I don't know whether you could say this, but also that one of the missions of Estonia within the World Trade Organization, for example, is to really bring the technology to other countries and to share it and to make sure that the trade can flow seamlessly. Do you have any experience, or if you have some examples of the government-to-government collaboration where Estonia leads the way or helps others? We have heard from Sean today that he was very happy that I think we would be in trouble, within the organization of ITVA, if the Estonian government would not have supported the initiative of ITVA. What is the role of Estonia? How do you see this? Because of course everyone is looking up to you right now. I mean, we have in the room and online participants from 40 countries, so they all want to learn from Estonia.
So Estonia is a hype. No, but because really, I mean, so what I want to say is that don't be afraid to copy-paste systems that work somewhere else. Estonia copied the ID card from Finland with the difference that we made it work. You know, Finland had the same ID card, but just people didn't use it. We made it mandatory. So sometimes it's such a small trick that actually makes things work, right? And X-Road that I mentioned earlier that we've been using since 2001, some countries can call it outdated now, fine. We have legacy that some countries don't have. With Finland, we have first cross-border data exchange over X-Road. Iceland is also in this group. It's called the NIS, Nordic Interoperability Institute Solutions. I'm very bad with acronyms. And all of these services in the real-time economy, we're working with the Baltics and Nordic countries as well. And I think it's crucial because why Estonian startups are so successful? Because when you open up your company in Estonia, you don't think, oh, my dream is to have this 1.3 million customers of Estonia, because no country or no company only dreams about having 1.3 million potential consumers. When you open up a company in Estonia, you think, I want to expand, I want to go cross-border. So what we and governments do is help those companies to reach or expand cross-border. And I just talked to a colleague of mine who now works at Planet 42, and she said that expansion legal analysis costs you roughly 200,000 euros. But what if us as governments, we build an expansion tool in a way that you choose your field, whether it's finance, whether it's food, whether it's agriculture, whether it's whatnot, and you use a similar system in eesti.ee, and you figure out which country has similar legislation, which does not have this field regulated at all, and you help figure those companies out where should they expand to next, so that they don't pay lawyers 200,000 for a legal analysis that says, oh, by the way, actually electric scooters are not regulated in Latvia, so you can go there, right? So all these sorts of things. So cross-border is crucial for expansion and for our companies to grow. And going back to this ESG, environment, social governance reporting that all of our companies now have to figure out, in the real-time economy team, we're building a sustainability tool. It's called SAS tool, which basically will automatize this reporting as well. If we standardize the data and we know all these 900 or over 900 rows that you're going to have to report to the government, then you can actually make this reporting automatic. And again, it doesn't make sense only to do this in Estonia, because maybe you have only one part of your company or in Estonia. It can be HQ, it can be our customer support, it can be whatever. But actually your activities are cross-border, so it should help you with this cross-border activities as well. So Estonia is a hype, but we're trying to prove that this hype is worth it.
Please involve us. I volunteer on behalf of SupplierPlus, and I'm looking at Kasper now. I volunteer to be that business that you involve in the expansion tool, because we are currently expanding as well. And I know with our General Counsel, Airi, sitting at the back, we actually had to go on the road to meet with lawyers, because it's much easier to explain things in person, but we also have some lawyers in the room, so I hope that they will not be threatened by the solution that all the information will be made available, but it's great. This is great, and I think that this information is very important for companies that want to grow. And speaking of growth, expansion, and in general geographies, André, you have lived almost everywhere. Almost.
Well, that's not entirely true.
But you lived in the UK, you lived in Kazakhstan, you lived in Ukraine, you are Estonian yourself, and now you live in Helsinki at the headquarters. Not at the headquarters, but where the headquarters are of the Nordic Investment Bank. But please tell us, from where you sit and what you know and what you have seen, what is the secret to Estonia's success with digital transformation?
Thank you. And first of all, great to be here. Always good to come back to home city, Tallinn. Maybe also to say that those of you who believe in karma, then you know very well that it catches up with you sooner or later. As when we talk about trade finance, then some 30 years ago, I was one of the very first in the Estonian banking sector, starting to build up a trade finance department at the time within the Tallinna Bank, which now is a respectable Swedish SEB brand. To your question, yes, I've lived in a few places and seen very different models. Germany, by the way, a big country, is missing from your list, okay, which also gives you a little bit of perspective. But I would say the leap of Estonia in the 90s really happened based on a combination of aspects. First, there was this huge energy created by, regaining independence, and kind of, that's number one. Number two, if you're only 1 million nation, then if you're not clever, nobody knows you exist. And the third element, I think, was the combination of the efforts by both private sector and the government. It was, I think, the banking sector and the telecom sector, and Valdo can tell more about that, that really created this willingness to kind of open and share data, create not only the internet banking and the fact that you can use your bank card, across the different bank customer bases in the same machine, but also this whole kind of an ID move. And I think the government role here is crucially important. You need people to trust the government, and I think you do have that in the Baltics and Nordics, comparing to many other parts of the world, including the UK, where we both lived, where people just resist the fact that they are being given an identity independently of not whether this is digital or whether this just resembles a number. They just say, no, I don't want my government to know what I do, who I am, and where I go. And that was not the case here. So I think it was the combination of the private sector initiative, the government willingness to do something that creates a society that can be efficient for many decades to come, and then this trust element of the population and willingness to accept new things.
And how do you see this now that, for example, in the Nordics, on the Nordic Investment Bank, you have this region of the Nordics and the Baltics. If you can comment, are there other countries now making initiatives similar to Estonia? So, as Sandra mentioned, that the ID card was actually taken from Finland, but it was made to work here in Estonia. So, does it now have an effect to the other side, that others are picking it up? And what do you see from the region where you operate?
In the Nordics, there is the overall attempt to get better linkages regionally. The whole Nordic, various different Nordic initiatives, creation of Nordic institutions, Nordic Council as such, etc. I think there is a desire to kind of create something that is regionally able to interoperate in different countries and accepted in different countries. So that is absolutely the case. I would say that learning from each other is, I think, a great way of making good progress. If you all kind of work in silos, then you sometimes you succeed, but often you fail, and you wouldn't even know it, until it costs you a lot of money or time. So I think the effort is clearly there. To my own taste, the effort could be much faster, bringing results. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there are both bureaucracies and regulations, but also willingness of market participants to go along.
Good. But then let's look at the market participants. So we have a very busy representative of a very busy market participant. Valdo, I looked up some numbers and I was really impressed that you have managed to, through the digital transformation at the port of Tallinn, you have managed to achieve at least, maybe now the figures are even higher, 30% reduction in the waiting time for ships when they come, because you, to the port, you introduce different systems, monitoring and better scheduling systems. But what have your experience been to actually make use of all this data that is being available, and how do you use open data in your daily operations of the port?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, that's true that we already using a lot of data, and daily basis it's around 2,000–3,000 terabytes daily basis. That's a little bit bigger number than in some banks. And we have a lot of different applications. But maybe just bring 2 examples where we really catch and see efficiency. And one is such a smart port application. That's the application name. With this application, we control and manage all the traffic on all our ports. We have 4 ports. And we use this application as a platform everywhere. You know, trucks, it's a big problem in the cities, and therefore the system helps us a lot. That means there is automated process, number recognition, then we take the weight, we measure the trucks and vehicles on a way, and then we reroute it to the right ship, because we have for example, very heavy traffic between Tallinn and Helsinki. It's really very beneficial for the operators because it's efficient. And now we're working even on smart vessel concept. That means that you don't need any manpower at all. We're routing the trucks, vehicles to the right place in a ship also. The second, maybe also very important, honestly, it's not the rocket science, it's easy.
Ships of science.
Yeah, it's maybe quite classical, but that single window for the vessels. Here in Estonia, we totally digitalized the entering of the vessels to our port. That means all the vessels, starting from big cruisers, and ending with different cargo vessels, declaring all the goods, all the cargo, passengers via web. That means the single window system is integrated via X-Road. That's X-Road owned by government with all the institutions in Estonia. That means that there is a connection to the customs, to the environmental department. That's really fully digitalized. And it's easy for the ship owners, for cargo owners, for the agents, and we really, that's obligatory in our ports. That means all the ships using that, and that's very efficient. No papers, and that gives also flexibility, and that's a competitiveness also in this field, because we have very heavy competition on cargo business. And if you're digitalizing the processes, then you are more flexible. That's very...
André, would you like to comment?
I just like this kind of real-life case where you can think of, how to compare and what does data really mean to the physical world. I often, in my own head, I kind of think of data as energy, because they both need to be created, they both need to be stored, they both need to be distributed in a safe way and in a way that doesn't cost you a fortune.
Yeah, maybe, of course, we will discuss it, Maria, later on, but from our perspective, more important even is not digitalize only the one part of logistics. The most important to digitalize whole logistics chain. Then you're getting real effects. That's the digitalization of multimodality. But on maritime side, yeah, we using this, and in one hand, with the smart port system, you need to take a look on your processes. That basically means classical process management. We have process management in place. That means you horizontally see the process, not only vertically. And of course, you need the change way of working. You have to go it through with operators. They have to agree. That's quite tough. But if you will execute this process engineering and then digitalize that, then effect is really there.
Valdo, you mentioned multimodality, and André, I will come back to you on overall on the approach of international financial institutions, how they can help with the infrastructure projects. But in general, what do you see right now happening? So you represent one of the most digitally advanced ports, at least in the Baltic Sea, the one that we know. But how does it work when there is a change in the transport? So the ships come here, you do your magic, and then they get offloaded without even touching most probably anything or speaking to anyone. Everything gets weighted.
Estonian style.
Yes, routed. And then they come out of port, and what happens then? Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
yes.
As I mentioned, the effect comes if you digitalizing all the chain. Because if you take from cargo owners' point of view, they don't care what kind of technology you're using, what kind of transportation you're using. They basically need two things. That's the time and the money. It's as in telco sector. I guess it's not very interesting if you're talking in phone where the minutes run. Via mobile or via cable, that's not very interesting. Same basically in logistics. And we're working just now quite heavily with our association of let's call it simply tracks. They using our data systems, they are almost integrated, but we have huge problems with railway, honestly. Of course, we're waiting for Rail Baltica here. Maybe we will have a little bit new culture and new approach to digitalization. But honestly, I mean, not only in Estonia, in Europe, we are very in a very pure situation with whole chain. Therefore, there is a lot of room to develop and to really give the benefits to the cargo owners. If you have a whole process digitalized, then it's very easy to give good offers, to really show where your cargo is in a certain moment and give different possibilities. Therefore, we have a lot of challenges still.
Good. And actually, yes, Rail Baltica is the most, I think it's, what I read is the quote would be the most ambitious infrastructure project in the region. And these are the projects that can really make a difference and really create connectivity and to connect the Baltics to the rest of Europe. Because some of you may or may not know, there are different tracks in the rails. In the Baltics, in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So,
and Finland.
And Finland, yes. And so the idea of this Rail Baltica is to really connect Helsinki to Warsaw with seamless transportation, something that can be done. But it's a multi-billion project, multi-year project. And the private sector cannot do it. And even most probably the governments needs a bit of coordination to do this. So I guess that would be a task for international financial institutions, for example, like the Nordic Investment Bank and others. But André, how do you, from your work at the IFI, what can you actually do to support digital transition and digital transformation in the region and in the countries where you invest?
I would first need to make a full disclosure that I'm also the chairman of the supervisory board of Rail Baltica Estonia, the holding company. So if you need a culprit, then you can talk to me afterwards. But indeed, maybe one more comment on the Rail Baltica, which is connectivity of people and goods, but it's also a problem or a project that has a very significant influence on the security in the region. Now, I live now in Finland, and as far as freight traffic, for instance, is concerned, Finland is saying, look, Finland is an island. If you look on the map, then it isn't quite, but if you take the geopolitical situation, then yes, it is, more so than ever before. So I think the connection through the Baltic countries to continental Europe is very important. Coming to the Nordic Investment Bank, we are a bank owned by 8 countries. We are an international financial institution, similar to European Investment Bank, World Bank, EBRD, and others. We can invest globally, so we can go and support the Nordic or Baltic companies all the way to South Africa or South America or Southeast Asia. We work based on 2 key principles where we would like to add value to what is already available in the market in terms of financing. One is improved productivity, and this is where innovation, technologies, data, and digitalization is the key pillar of that. And then the second mandate element or purpose why we exist is environmental protection, which of course is now also much bigger kind of sustainability, green transition, climate change mitigation and adoption element. If we look at where our projects mostly fall, then I have seen a significant increase in the share of kind of environmental projects over the past 5-6 years. However, the productivity continues to be very strong. So rather than doing kind of a project based on one mandate element, environment, at the expense of productivity, we often actually hit both. And on the digitalization specifically, we have financed a large number of enterprises specifically to help them to digitalize. A few examples, maybe Fiskars, which you recall is actually the oldest listed company in Finland. Started off producing spades and axes and later scissors, but is now really a lifestyle company. I could also mention Orkla, for instance, in the food production, to digitalize essentially the internal and the customer data across all the different entities internationally. Valmet, another Finnish one, heavy industry company. Latvenergo from this region, where we help them to install smart meters so that the share of those that had smart electricity meters went up from 45% to 90%. So these are the few examples. Hennes and Mauritz, I could mention, Skau in Denmark, and many more where we have basically financed digitalization specifically. And it often has elements of both internal as well as external. And it's also the internal element for us as a bank is very important. You know, we have moved most of our own data to cloud last year. We are building an electronic data warehouse. We are now making a very significant effort this year and next to kind of also improve our own customer experience so that, you know, invoices for interest and principal payments all go automatically, etc. So we have to invest a very significant amount of money into our own IT that then also helps customers. And of course, finally, there is a lot of regulatory non-financial data reporting coming up. You know, the task force for climate-related financial disclosures, where we have become a member, and so on and so forth. You know, how do we actually reduce the carbon footprint? How do we report different elements of the things that we're actually measuring?
And thank you. I think all these examples are really interesting, especially for those who live in the region. All the names that you mentioned are very known, and for others, for example, you mentioned Orkla. They are present in other countries, not only in the Nordics, and also owns a few chocolate factories as well nowadays. And so this is very important to really help companies to digitize so that they can make use of you know, I see the world when they're ready for the digital state for the businesses, which Sandra and her colleagues will be creating, and then all the information and data will be flowing seamlessly. What I wanted to ask you is, and you did mention that you started trade finance at the predecessor of SEB here in Estonia. What we know from in terms of trade finance or access to finance, supply chain finance, is that SMEs are usually left out, and one of the reasons for that is because of the cost of onboarding and compliance and the data. How do you see the change happening over the next years if, for example, following the example of Estonia, other countries also introduce a central service for KYC information and make it available to companies so that they can, with one card, whether it will be an ID card or a little USB thing, I don't know how you call it this, that the Estonians use to make payments, that they could actually share their data?
Yeah, you're touching on a very important point on SMEs, and I've always been thinking in terms of the value chains, both kind of physical or horizontal, but also the vertical or the financial value chains. We need to think, how do we channel money to the right places at the right price? And of course, there is this, what I would maybe call a kind of a financing food chain, where there are the sovereign wealth funds at the very top, the big, large, Western pension funds that then, use asset managers and investment funds to distribute. Then come the supranationals like the NIBs and EIBs and EBRDs, and then all the way down to local commercial banks. And then eventually you still need more to build there, I think. More different solutions, but also different players to the market. When I first heard of the SupplierPlus financing model, it was really an eye-opening model, eye-opening moment for me, and I found that this is absolutely fantastic. That you can kind of, create a platform where you can link the very small to somewhat larger, to the very big, and then bring the financiers to the same platform, and effectively find the efficiency also in terms of pricing and how financing is available to these rather small suppliers who are often too small, for the banks to bother, even the local commercial banks to bother to kind of think of their own, financing supply chain. They don't have security very often, etc., etc. So I think this kind of a value chain still has gaps. And I really welcome, also today's initiative to kind of bring that more to the forefront of thinking, and the need to bring out that the need to create more players and more efficient players is very important. Because innovation often happens at the SME side. Again, to my earlier comment, if you're small, you need to be smart.
Mm-hmm.
And we will talk a bit more about this tomorrow in terms of how actually to use technology for different things. Tomorrow we will talk about compliance, the use of open data in compliance. We will talk about risk management. So we will be trying to cover as much as possible tomorrow, but also later today we will have a session on how the market players who are not banks, so asset managers and other investors can actually make use and can, by using technology, can come in and be available for small and medium enterprises. I'm going to take some questions now. Actually, with the workshop reloaded, and apologies for looking at my phone because I had to key in my details again, but we have a lot of questions and one comment. So I will start with a comment. The comment is, there is no such thing as bad weather, just the wrong clothing. So I guess at this point, so those of you who didn't bring warm clothing, you will bring them next time when you come to visit us, but I do agree that the weather, it's not, it's not so bad. But I also understand.
You live in the UK,
yes,
so
yes. It's a very similar weather, I must say. But Sandra, I do agree that if everything would be perfect, and let's say today will be sunshine, then everyone would just want to stay in Estonia, not go anywhere and make use of all the services. But touching base on the KYC, Sandra, I have a question for you on KYC and the data consolidation in one platform. How do you reserve the rights of people to decide what information and to whom they want to give away? And how do you make sure that the individual owns their data at the end, and it's not given away to any third party that connects to the database?
Super, great question. To begin with, we don't consolidate, yes, we consolidate the data in a way that it's withdrawn from different information systems, and then it's fed to the person who inquired the data in an edible format. But actually, SD.de, it's just a landing page. It doesn't hold any data in SD.de. Our ID card that we copy-pasted from Finland, it doesn't hold any data. So Estonia is a very distributed information system country. So all of the information is in different databases, and for the purpose of offering a service, this information is withdrawn from there. So let me give you a real life example based on individual, not business, but I'll get to the point later. A few years ago, I was speeding, and I got caught. For the first time, I got caught. So I got my first speeding ticket. I had to go into the police car. And I don't even carry my driver's license with me anymore. So basically, I stepped into the police car, I handed over my ID card, because this is where you get the information. And there's a small screen in the police car, and they just enter my personal ID code, and they could see some data about me. But they couldn't see what grades I had received at school, what type of illnesses I have had, or how much money I have in my bank account. What they saw was, these are the identity documents of this person. So they saw my ID card, they saw my passport, they saw what's my place of residence, where do I live, and then they saw if I had had any previous fines. I hadn't had any previous fines. So this was all the information that they could see about me, because as a police person, as a policeman, you can see only information that you can see regarding your profession. A doctor can see only your medical records, a policeman can see only your police records. And after, when I left the police car and I got the fine, which okay, I don't.
We don't need to know.
Yeah, you don't need to know. So after I received the fine, I logged onto SD.de, and with the data tracker, I could see that a policeman had checked my data this day. If I would have not taken a car, if I would have been by bus today or on foot that day, and a policeman would have checked my data, I could have immediately challenged this and said they had no right to check my data. And really, people have paid fines, they have lost their licenses if they look at the data that they're not supposed to look at. But of course, still, a policeman could have only checked my, records related to what the police can see. And the same applies to KYC, the same applies to anything. We now have elections upcoming. You can use internet voting, but the software that you download and the requests that you make, you can only see this person's residence, age, and do they have any do they have the legal capacity to vote? Or if they're in prison, for instance, they cannot vote. So with the KYC as well, it withdraws only the information necessary what to give to this entity that inquired this data about the specific procedure. You want to open a bank account in another country, you want to give your investors some information. So it only withdraws from different information systems the specific data that is needed for this transaction. And it always leaves a trace behind. So if you as an individual make this request, of course you have the right to collect data from different databases about yourself. If in the future this can be done for legal persons, or if this can be done based on consent by the recipient of the data, so the end user, whether it's a bank, whether it's a financial institution, then it's on a consent basis. So first, when this inquiry is made, you can see that this person has given consent to this specific entity, to this specific financial institution to inquire this data. You can always withdraw the consents and so forth. So we always have these checks and balances in place. And you mentioned trust earlier, I think. So I think it really comes down to trust, right? In Estonia, we have a history, of decades of occupation, so we never trusted our occupants. But now we have had our own country for over 30 years in a row, and there haven't been any major failures during this time. We had one ID card crisis in 2017, but no data was even leaked, and we were super open about this. We communicated immediately. There was a press release basically 5 minutes after we discovered that there were some problems with the ID card. So transparency, open communications, these create this trust that people have towards the government. So, I mean, I was speeding, I got a fine, the policeman looked at my data, it's okay, because I know they were allowed to check my data. At the same time, if I go out now, it's slippery, I fall, I break my leg, I call the ambulance can see my medical records, but they cannot see my police records. So they see what's my blood type, if I need a blood transfusion, they see what type of surgeries have I had, do I have any allergies? So this is the only type of information they can see. So checks and balances.
Yes, it's good. I hope the question was answered. While you were answering, you got 5 upvotes. So I guess that would be the also vote of thanks and appreciation for the answer. Valdo, I have a question for you. How are you using digital tools and solutions in finance activities? For example, customer billing, billing towards you, financing actual supply chain, and so on.
First of all, the digital world is very interesting that Sandra described different services, because it's all about the service in this digital world. That it's very, very nice that you can have a marriage digitally, but can't divorce. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Nice. That means.
So we want more people to stay married and less people to divorce.
Exactly. It will come, or it stays as it is. You can only marry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. The divorce will come soon as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm older guy. I prefer go to the church in these cases, but all right. Sorry, Maria. The question was about the...
How are you using, so within the port of Tallinn, how are you using the digital tools and solutions within your finance activities? For example, billing your clients, receiving bills and paying bills, or financing your supply chain as a port?
Yeah. As I said, we're using this these 2 biggest systems. One is single window. Here we see the declarations from the ports, and of course this system is integrated with our bookkeeping system, and it's all the process is digitalized. But we also, not the classical port, we also acting as a ship owner. That means we operate the vessels between mainland and bigger islands to Saaremaa and Hiiumaa. And here we have such a billing or ticket system for the end users. It's fully automated, that you drive to the island and you just buy the ticket from mobile, and again, number recognition, you automatically the system reroutes you to the right vessel, right time. And that's, of course, I would say it's basically billing system, because we charge the end user and we bill them. And there are some additional services, but basically it's definitely a full system what is digitalized. And then there are some smaller applications also. We're running, for example, Marina. That's also, you can book the key and bill via web. Therefore, no, that's of course a smaller thing, but I guess it's useful. And in the future, I guess it will be totally automated. And we, for example, offer the energy for our customers, for operators. And that's also digitalized, and then behind that is a billing system. Therefore, it's commodity.
Should we as people be scared that everything, the robots will take over and will do all the work, and it will be automated? So have you had experience of replacing certain processes because it's automated, so that you reskill, upskill your colleagues actually, and because they are no longer need to operate something, they just need to supervise it and make sure that it runs properly.
Yeah, definitely. In this smart port system, to control the tracks and the whole traffic, their artificial intelligence is involved, definitely. It automates a lot. And automation is very important in terms of efficiency, at least in our industry. And for example, we are only port in Europe where we have fully automated mooring in 3 keys. That means the pneumatical auto-mooring system takes big vessels. There are quite a huge vessels to the quay. Therefore, digitalization and automation is integrated and interconnected. Absolutely.
Valdo, you mentioned the single window, and when we were talking before the panel to discuss what we're going to discuss, I looked up and I can see that according to the World Trade Organization, or according to the research and some of the impact that they have collected from the single window operations, they claim that the speed and the efficiency can be achieved is up to 50% in terms of the speed of obtaining permits, of filing some information. How has your experience been with a single window in Estonia? And what are the challenges that you see? Whether there are any correlation, for example, to the transport, when you said that the transport, the whole logistics supply chain needs to be digital. How does it work with a single window? If you have one working really well here in Estonia, for example, if the goods go to Finland and there is no single window, what happens then?
Yeah, that's a very good question and very critical for Europe, but for the world, because maritime business and logistics is global. And I hate regulation. Coming from private sector, I really hate that. But there are some buts where we need regulation. And definitely, if you take the aviation, it's more regulated than us. And we would like to be very happy as a port, and our cargo owners, ship owners, would love if we have a certain standard for this single window for all the ports in Europe and in the world. That means that there is a standardized processes and documentation to use in every port, because it's nowadays very different. In some ports, you still agent running with huge package of paper. It takes the time. Therefore, we would like to have a unified single window for the ships in ports. Then I know that there is ongoing process in, how you call it, digital waybill for the tracks and then especially for all the cargo. I know that there will be certain decisions in coming year on years to have really a standardized waybill. That helps a lot, definitely. I just would like to mention these two.
Okay.
Here we need the standardization.
So we will also, tomorrow, as the last panel of the conference, we will talk about digital negotiable instruments as well. So there will be a touch on this. But maybe as a highlight here, what I wanted to ask Sandra, I will come to you now. So the standardization and creating the systems which can talk to each other, understand each other. How important is the legal and regulatory environment to be the same, and what can governments actually do? Maybe I'm sort of repeating my question, but I go from the legal point of view and regulatory point of view. How does Estonia help other countries, if at all, to make this environment easy to implement digital transformation and digital solutions and automated solutions?
Well, I have to follow up on what you said. You hate regulation. I hate over-regulation. Sometimes regulation indeed is needed, right? Yeah. The same that we made our ID cards mandatory. This was based on regulation, right? Standardization is often agreed upon. It doesn't have to be with the regulation. It can be voluntary standardization. But look at where it got us in the physical world. I mean, I mentioned I have Apple tablet, then I have a Fitbit watch, and then I have a OnePlus smartphone, and then I have HP laptop. You can imagine how many different chargers I have. So this is standardization in real life, right? I mean, in physical life. Data is also real life. In terms of data standardization, it's crucial that we are actually able to share this data between one another. It's like people speaking different languages. If you would speak here Finnish now and I would speak Estonian, we might understand something, but if you
we might also misunderstand something.
Exactly, this is what I wanted to say. If you say hallitus, in Estonia it's mold, in Finnish it's government. So we might completely misunderstand each other. So data standards are crucial in order to actually speak the same language, to share this data, whether it's specifically for trucks crossing borders. Why are lorries? Why do you have to today leave the lorry, show the documentation, all these sorts of things, when you could have digital documentation? You don't even need to stop the car. I mean, thanks to Schengen, you wouldn't need to stop your regular car. Why would you need to stop a lorry carrying some cargo if you could do this digitally? So in that sense, regulation can be useful, but regulation has to be enabling, which I started my keynote earlier. I believe in regulating once only. You know, it means regulate but regulate it well. You don't need several pieces of regulation to regulate the same thing from different angles. It just creates confusion for citizens, it creates confusion for businesses. And if you have to spend more time on figuring out the regulation than you can spend time on doing your actual business activities, then everyone loses out, right? So regulation is crucial if it's enabling, and it has to be clear-cut. And yes. So I'm a lawyer myself, I forgot to mention this, but I'm not a traditional lawyer. I have my bachelor's in EU and international law, my master's in law and technology. So I like to understand how the technologies work and how much should we regulate them. Just one more example. In 2007, Estonia had the first ever and largest, up to then, cyber attacks from one nation state to another. And I'm not going to mention the country, but you all know what the country is who attacked us. And there you put a bunch of lawyers in one room and a bunch of IT people in the other room. A few of those people understood what DDoS attack was and what's cybersecurity, and the others realized what it would mean legally, but they couldn't talk between one another. So in that sense, regulation or common languages can be useful, even if it's literal common language. But I don't definitely believe in over-regulation.
Good. So, but let's look now. Step away from Estonia. André, I'm coming to you with your hat as a representative of the IFI community. And there are a lot of countries who may want to actually have what Estonia has, or at least to try to start doing this. But how would a country start? And what can IFIs do to support this, the creation of the enabling environment, so the creation of regulatory frameworks or legal frameworks that could help them to make things, the magic that Valdo spoke about the port, this magic happen in their countries? What is the role of the development banks in helping countries to improve their legal and regulatory environment?
Well, if you ask in terms of what's the different role from the rest of the banking sector, then I would say, first of all, that you know, it only makes sense to be an IFI or a state-owned bank if you want. If you provide something that others don't, and that could be long-term financing, but it could also be longer-term view, where you can bring in also the kind of the policy element of things, and you can also be the intermediary sharing the experiences from one country to the other. And that could be, you know, something where we are talking about digitalization and data, and I know that there are actually several countries that have learned from the Estonian experience. You know, just to name a few countries in Caucasus, Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Moldova. I think it's kind of more difficult to make that kind of an impact on a bigger countries, you know. You know, in France and Germany and Italy, you kind of tend to have your own, and even if you then use someone else's experience, then it's only a tiny bit of the whole overall package, so that it's perhaps not mentioned sufficiently enough. But I've seen also similar kind of know-how transfer in other sectors, you know, be it the energy sector, be it capital markets, for instance, where again, you know, and the regulatory framework are also relevant, both energy and capitalization and also how to use data, you know, to kind of standardize the markets and what is required. So in the sense, I would say that the regulatory bit is also a little bit of a hygiene issue. You know, if you know my hands are clean, his hands clean, yes, we can do business together. You know, it's a bit of, in English I would say, you need to know who is who in the zoo and where is the loo if things go sour.
I really like it. So, André, at this point, there was one comment, and I think maybe, yes, you seem to really like phrases and sayings, and your statement about Finland being an island has really piqued someone's attention. So they would really like you to elaborate on this.
In terms of how is Finland an island?
Yes.
Take COVID. When COVID hit in March 2020 and the traffic really was about to stop, you know, then the supply chains got a really big hit, day one. And Finland was really worried that not only can they not, you know, get their goods out to the world market, but also they can't get the components. Mercedes, for instance, has a factory producing in Finland. You know, they cannot get the components for the cars to finish. So, i.e., they will fail on their agreements to their customers to whom they need to deliver. You know, then they came, for instance, to NIB, said, you know, we need to make sure that the ferries are still running. We said, fine. We offered, Finnish government actually offered a little bit of subsidy to all ferry companies because the over-the-sea traffic was really the only option. And we, as from NIB, we financed, for instance, Tallinn with a 100 million euro, what we called kind of a crisis response loan, really, because, you know, Tallinn is largely goods and people's traffic, and essentially people's traffic virtually stopped from one day to the other. Partially because people no longer wanted to travel, partially because Finland kind of closed its border to Estonians, as did many other countries to their neighbors. So we kind of came in, we helped to make sure that we kind of get over that hump. At that point, of course, we had no idea how long it's going to last. Is it something that is 3 months? Is it something that is 3 years? Or even longer? But I think, you know, these type of situations are also where the international financial institutions, you know, can come in, and we did also COVID loans, for instance, to the 3 governments, Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian governments, which were the first ever in the 45-year history of NIB, loans directly to the states. But we did it because the capital market disappeared, and the countries asked us 2 weeks later, the decision was done, and another 2 weeks later, we dispersed the money. And the loan to Estonia, by the way, 750 million euros, is still the largest single loan in the history of NIB.
Very good. And
so you need to be quick,
yes,
and you need to bring something that is missing from the market.
But you mentioned earlier about the cloud, that you, within NIB, you're moving to cloud, and you're making it easier for the customers, for example, when you want to send the invoice, the bill to pay interest on the loan and communicate with customers. But has your internal processes changed, let's say, after the pandemic? So have you introduced anything where you use open data in your internal, you know, decision-making or internal processes? How do you actually consume data for your own processes? Well,
now you get me on the technicalities I don't perhaps know enough about, but you know, what I can say is that it all starts with the mindset. You know, one thing is that I'm trying to kind of implement paperless office. We have lots of papers. You know, we have twice a week credit committees where there are anything between 4 to 14 cases being discussed. Each of these has a major amount of documentation, and to kind of bring that over to your own laptop or computer is not only that we are saving you a few trees, but it's so the data is more easily accessible. You can search for it, you can sort it, you can flip it between the different pages, etc. Now, in terms of the kind of using open data, I think a lot of it is actually related, if I think now in terms of the external activities and reporting. I refer to the non-financial reporting, you know, particularly what we really try to achieve and how we measure our own success on the green transition, for instance. We have joined many of these kind of disclosure platforms and that set the standards, and I think that's one of the elements where we need to be better in terms of both collecting, storing, and disseminating data.
Good. I like that you mentioned about also the mindset. It takes time, but the question would be, maybe we can start this round with everyone. What causes the change? Is the mindset will adopt technology, or is the technology will change the mindset?
But it's both ways, I think. Because also, the more you have, the more you see, hey, look, why can't we have more? Take the smart ID, for instance. I'm asking the question to the government that why does it take so long to bring the smart ID kind of authority to do transactions to the same level than the ID card? You know, the ID card and the card reader is, in my mind, too much 20th century.
I use mobile ID. It has the same feature.
You need an Estonian mobile for that.
Exactly.
I don't have it,
True.
so yeah. I'm a customer.
You're asking me this right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know the answer. It's not in my domain. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No, but it's interesting how kind of, if you can do things that actually, it's in human nature that it makes you to demand more. I remember 10 years ago, 2013, I was sitting in my London office. I sold my car that was physically in Estonia, registered in Estonia, and the keys were in Estonia. And the sales transaction happened, of course, via the digital means. It took me 2 minutes. The eyes popped. My colleague said, "What did you just do?" I said, "I sold my car." How? Because I have a buyer. I say, "I'm selling my car to this person." He's saying, "I'm buying." He makes the transfer, and I will say, "Look, the keys are over there. Pick it up." 2 days later, he gets a new technical registration document sent to his home address. That's it. But if you have that opportunity, you think, okay, what else can we do?
Exactly. No, I fully agree. The more you have, the more you want. Like you see Estonians on Twitter saying that Estonia, the digital periphery, it's lagging behind. Estonia doesn't even know what's digital anymore, that the digital tiger is sleeping. And then you go into any other country and you realize, okay, actually we're doing pretty well. So I fully agree. The more you have, the more you want. But about the mindset, I think it's all of the things I already mentioned as well, that you as a government, you can become very lazy if you know that your own citizen is your only customer. So, but if your mindset is, I want to offer the best possible digital services for my citizens and for my companies, then you actually make an effort to do something. And in our team, we say, our goal is literally to build the best business environment in the world. And we really try to make an effort and make this happen. But your mindset can also be really, they're going to use it anyway. So this is what I do. But in Estonia, I think from citizens and businesses' perspective, the mindset has changed because they see what they get quid pro quo if they use the digital services. So for instance, we're now going to have tax declaration time from 15th of February. And people are joking that Estonians are the only people in the world who want to declare their taxes because it's so easy. And if you do it fast, then you get tax refunds back really, really fast. It's almost a fully automated process because as an individual, you log into the tax system of the Tax and Customs Authority. It says, throughout this year, we have this data about you. You've earned that much money. You've made so many donations. You have a bank loan for your real estate. So here are the deductions. This is how much you made. This is how much you get back, right? So it's almost fully automated. So people are like, okay, I want to declare my taxes because it's so easy. Versus I lived in Poland, a great country. I really like Poland, by the way. But I had to hire a tax lawyer to declare my physical individual tax declaration. A, because everything was in Polish. And second, because the information system was actually a PDF picture on the system. And if you used Google Translate, you couldn't use it because the information wasn't there. It was a picture format information, right? So the mindset, of course, the more you want, the more you have, the more you want. But the mindset also has to be there on both sides. I'm willing to trust my government. I also teach at Taltech. And every year I ask my students, do you trust your government? Do you trust using those digital services? And you have people, coming in from Venezuela and they say, of course, I don't trust my government. And if you ask any people from Estonia and they say, okay, The trust is decreasing with the political situation, but all of us use the digital services. 98% of people declare their taxes online. I don't know what the 2% of people do. They probably don't declare their taxes at all. And I mean, most of the services are used digitally because it's so easy, it's so fast. Why would they use anything else, right? So the mindset is a crucial thing. I mean, take Germany. You mentioned Germany. Estonia has hosted the most German delegations of all the delegations in the world in our e-Estonia briefing center. Japan and Germany, they fight to is the first and second place, right? And they go back home and say, oh, this is great what you're doing in Estonia, but we cannot do this in Germany. You know, start from a small county event, just start from somewhere and build up from there. Canada took over Estonia Next Road, not across the country, but in one of the states. And it works there. So the mindset doesn't have to be, I have all or I have nothing. You can just build on things. I mean, Estonia, when we regained independence in 1991, you can imagine what our GDP was. It was in minuses, probably. I don't know. It was, you know, nothing.
It can't be minus, but it was
It can't be minus, but I mean, this is so. And where did you go from there? We were like, we had nothing. Our government didn't have money at the time. Our prime minister was 30+ years old. And they're like, okay, we have nothing, so I have to build something from nothing. So let's start one by one. And our colleagues from other countries offered us, you know, take our old systems or start using bank checks. And we were like, no, we're going to do things from scratch. And we're going to just, we have nothing right now, but we're soon to have a lot. So.
And now you do have a lot. And thank you, Sandra, so much. But Valdo has been itching to...
Yeah, sorry, I can talk.
No, don't worry, no. But because I think he is actually having also a different type of experience, because the service that the Port of Tallinn offers, all the solutions, the infrastructure, needs not only to be used by Estonians who trust the government and actually are used to it, but also all the incoming ships that may not be so used to it. And have you faced reluctance, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's always with technology push and pull, but with technology it's very important to have a vision, and then comes the change of mentality in a company, in a state, same story. And really, what Sandra told in the very beginning, that was more than 20 years ago, when we started with digitalization and e-government, how to say it. And the vision came from private sector at that time. I was also involved on that with big honor. And then politicians also took it over. And the very key was the cooperation with private sector and government. And that's all about the vision and trust. That's very important. And then you are going to sell this vision, and there you're changing the mentality, because with technology you all know that nobody knows what the customer really need, or customers, they don't know what they need. They never thought that it's possible to have a mobile ID. What is changing basically the behavior, and we already more than 10 years signing all the documents digitally, no papers anymore. And therefore you have to have a vision and then understand the mega trends, and then sell it to the employees or the citizens. That's classics. That's basically classics. And of course, with this digital society, it's very easy. One was the vision, and then the very critical is the public key infrastructure. If you don't have that, it's all based on that, the digital identity and ID and mobile ID, and now the smart ID on top of that. That was the key, and government trusted us as a private companies when we launched that, and that was the most critical. And then, of course, the services from public sector and private sector. Therefore, it's really easy, the structure to launch the e-society.
I think it's easy for you to say now, looking back, and you say it's very easy.
Yeah,
yes.
but basically, yeah, it's...
Yes.
But a lot of it boils down to the kind of economics, you know. You need efficiencies. You need to do the good thing, do it in a good time, do it well. And that's, I think, the driver eventually. And then you need trust in the system, because I think it's fantastic that in Estonia you have this kind of a centralized, you know, the X road. Because if everybody would build their own system, you would have a lot of compatibility issues, and my system is better than yours, and then we both compete ourselves against each other to death in terms of financial pain and gain. So I think that's really kind of important, that at the end of the day, whatever we do needs to make sense economically and in terms of convenience and the quality.
I have a question which fits nicely here now, and it's actually to everyone. So maybe I will start with Valdo and come here, this way. So we spoke about the mindset change and maybe more focusing on the users of services, of governmental services, of your services. But how do you educate and update your team with constantly changing tech environment, or within the constantly changing tech environment?
Mm-hmm. No, there are many levels. What we did, it's very critical to really take the critical mass of users. When we started 20 years ago, then we immediately launched telcos, banks, such a massive programs to really teach users, families, older segment. There were hundreds of thousands went through these courses that was free of charge. We really invested to that. That means that you need this critical mass. And then, of course, services with usability. The usability has to be very, how to say, easy to use, or, easy to use. And then on company level, again, it's such a vision approach from the management team, basically. It starts from the top. Are you working with papers or not? Are you trying to be efficient or not? It starts from the management, actually, on company level.
Thank you. Well, Sandra, I would assume that you
Try
have
to rephrase a bit for
yes,
me.
Yes, I will do. So I think Estonia in general is a very young country, and I would think that you have enthusiastic colleagues. How do you actually keep them up to date? Because the technology changes on a daily basis. How do you make sure that as a government you are not on the digital periphery anymore, and you actually really in the know of the latest technologies?
They keep me up to date. Yeah. They tell me what, they come to me with proposals and tell me. There's a colleague sitting right over there. She's coming to me with ideas all the time. So this is how it works. No, but really, I think it needs to be both-sided. And in any system, it's government system, company system, you cannot have only top-down or bottom-up thinking and leading. It has to be both ways. But I think, in Estonia, the use of digital technologies is quite high. I think it's 86% of the population. Literally, when we started Estonia, when we refounded Estonia, then I don't know if it's the case in your countries, but in Estonia, if you go to a supermarket, then someone is trying to sell you their pension scheme from one bank or another, or they try to sell you their telco scheme. We really had people telling, do you have an ID card? Do you know how to use your ID card? Can we teach you how to give a digital signature? So we had literally ID buses going around Estonia and doing that. And my past grandma, she used Instagram. And when I lived in Brussels, we used to send pictures over Viber. And my grandpa and my grandma had an anniversary. So my grandpa took a picture of my grandma took a picture of my grandpa, and then they sent it to me. And at one point, I was sending pictures, and my grandma said, "Dear child, I'm on Instagram now. I see all of your pictures. So any government services or company services should be as easy to use as social media, and this should be the key. Then people can follow up. If you talk about difficult terminology, then it just doesn't make sense. There is even a book in Korea written about Estonia, the first country in blockchain. I mean, we have very limited uses of blockchain and very limited government information systems. That's only KSI blockchain, keyless signature infrastructure blockchain, not all blockchain. So, again, a hype.
I will come back to you on the hype. We will have one more question for you, because someone picked up on that. But André, I'm just trying to see, there was a question, sorry, I need to see where it was about the managerial position. So maybe if I pick up on what Valdo said, that it comes from the top. So from the IFI, within the organization, you are at the top. And you are Estonian, and you know how to use all the technologies. And so how do you influence your colleagues, but also how do you as an IFI have the dialogue with your clients at the top level to help them to transition to digital means and the technology?
I would give top marks to Sandra for the response, that you don't need to do everything yourself. I think very obviously the modern leadership is both leading and being led. And you know, my own kind of metaphor for leadership is that leadership is not a position, it's a service. So I don't see myself as being the one that has the best ideas and channels it down, that energizes people. You know, what you need to do is you need to create the environment whereby people actually take the leadership at all different levels. You don't need a title to lead something.
I think we don't need titles at all, because...
Well, maybe if an external person comes and they need to know who is who, but at the end of the day, I don't think that it's the kind of the sole target of a leader to, you know, to kind of create the vision, implement it, check it, and then organize a party that, you know, this is how great I am. I don't see myself as leading a pyramid. I'm more of a leading a flatter institution.
But when you joined the Nordic Investment Bank, being from Estonia originally, did you have, at least at the beginning, let's say, a bit of a hype around you? Did people come to you and say, oh, so great, you're from Estonia?
But I don't think it was because they saw me coming from Estonia, even though I am the first president of the Nordic Investment Bank from the Baltics. But they came to me because they had looked at my CV. They thought, look, you know, this guy has been around, knows a few things about banking, and he clearly is not a political appointment. Yeah. I think that's what created the positive energy, rather than me being Estonian, Latvian, or Indonesian.
But I like your example about selling the car. Sandra, about the hype, so I will read the question. You mentioned Estonia is not a hype, but really implements things more successfully than other countries. What is your measurement of the success of Estonia as a country?
I actually several times also said Estonia is a hype, but you have to hype things, you know, especially when you're in the far northern eastern corner of Europe. What's the success measure? When we talk about the things that we discussed today, ID card, 100% of Estonians use ID card. Of course, it's mandatory, but it's mandatory above the age of 16. So people even have it for their kids, because this is also a travel document. E-residency, we have very, very soon 100,000 e-residents who have applied for Estonia. Last year, they brought in direct economic effect of 50 million euros, 50. So for bigger countries, maybe that's nothing. But for a country such as Estonia, it's still a very high number. Use of government services, you know, 98% of people declare their tax declarations online, because it just makes sense. And for us, as the business environment team, for me, success is, I say, we want to build those services. Are you interested in joining us and telling us what do you need to build better services? So eventually, for you as companies, for you as banks, for us as governments, the success rate is 2 customers want to use your services. And I think it's as simple as that.
I think they do want. Because, as I mentioned earlier, so to put it in perspective, the number of e-residents would qualify as the 2nd largest city in Estonia. So that's the size of this. With just a bit of 3 minutes to spare, I will just ask if there are any questions from the floor. Yes, there is one. Do we have a microphone? And if you could introduce yourself. So you see, if you didn't want to introduce yourself, you should have written it on WhatsApp because they're anonymous.
Oh, yes, now it's on. Yes, my name is Olena Granyuk. I represent SME Banking Club, and this last question, Sandra, was from me. I don't know whether you see it on the online chat. But in addition, if I may ask, what my I guess what could be also a measurement of the success of a country is, for example, how fast is in Estonia to open or to register business, meaning sole entrepreneur and also a company with several shareholders, and also how fast to close, let's say.
15 minutes and 33 seconds to open up a company, but this is a lag because the Estonian companies went to the UK to showcase how fast you can open up a company, but unfortunately there were internet connection problems in the UK. So this 15 minutes and 33 seconds is actually, you know, a bad result. But in real life, for someone who's doing it for the first time, it's probably going to take maximum couple of hours. We say the longest time is to figure out the name of the company. Mm-hmm. And what was your second question?
How fast is to close?
Yeah, this is the problem. Well, Estonia has figured out the life cycle of how fast you can open up a company and all the other procedures. It's the closing down of the company that's difficult. It's in my to-do list, but you know, there's some interesting statistics next to this. Estonia has more one-person limited liability companies than Germany, and not percentage-wise, but literally more one-person limited liability companies than Germany. It's because, you know, it's hard to close down the business. But it's also because, you know, every fifth or so Estonian has their own business because it's easy to make some side hustle. Yeah, you wanted to?
No.
Oh,
I was counting the 50.
He's counting.
Yeah. And the most entrepreneurial people come from Estonian small islands, by the way. There, I think it was a very high number, like every third or something, people who have their own companies. But the closing down the part, it's a thing. I'm glad you asked. It's on my to-do list. My time up in this position is in 4.5 years, so come back to me in 4.5 years. And if it's still difficult, then I have failed in my position.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't know, may I have another question? Or?
Any other questions?
Then, if I may,
okay.
My question probably to all of you, because you discussed the question of the changing of the mindset. And if we say about, and if we talk about the mindset of the citizens or of the businesses, I think this is easier to change, because if you make the processes, digital process obligatory for them, like the tax declaration, and just to say about Poland, for several years, this is digitalized and automated as well, and it is obligatory to do it in electronic way. You cannot do it in another way. So this changed the mindset. When you put the things obligatory, you don't have choice that you can do either digitally or paper. Then kind of, there is no choice and you do it digitally. But how to change the mindset? Because we do see now that as I'm covering the Central Eastern Europe region, that the main barrier to the digital transformation and to innovation and efficiency is the mindset, not the technology itself. How to change and the mindset of the top managers, of the financial organizations and of the governmental bodies. How to change the mindsets of these tops that are to decide what will be the legislation and what will be the process, how to let them see the new business models coming from the digitalization. Is it possible to change at all, or you should change just people? What is your opinion?
I would say 3 things. I think on most things you can convince people by explaining the rationale.
All right.
On some things where it doesn't work, but they are still needed, you need to do it by force, mandatory. And on some things you need to accept that it's not going to happen.
Right.
Okay, then just super briefly, because we're out of time. Exactly, I fully agree with what you said. And for instance, the very first digital service in Estonia was the e-tax declarations, which I've mentioned several times today. So the mindset shift comes from when people realize what they get out of it. So sometimes it needs to be done by force if they don't understand yet. But in most cases, the mindset change comes from people realize, why is it better for me? I don't care if it's better for government. I don't care if you saved 3% of your GDP by providing digital signatures. What do I get out of this? oh, I can declare taxes in 1 minute instead of 2 days. Okay, I'm sold. So I think this is the main thing.
Thank you very much.
Do you have anything to add?
Maybe some classical methods we actually used for the classical workers in port. You still have, not everything is automated yet. There are simple works and simple guys, and we just motivated the workers to have a digital tools in their pockets where they getting the orders daily basis, and if you use that, then you're getting extra money.
Money is always
So,
a good incentive.
Alena, as from the
Very
panel,
simple.
whatever it takes to make it work. Force, incentives as money, carrot, stick, everything. But I think that it is possible. We have seen this in Estonia. We have heard today. It is possible, and I would like to thank you very much, André, Sandra, and Valdo. Aitäh! And we will discuss everything that you spoke about. Rest assured, it will be discussed in much more detail today and tomorrow. And I really hope that Estonia can inspire all the viewers also online who are there. We have about 200 people online from 40 countries. And Sandra, they may, now that they know that you will be for another 4 years, they may come back to you with lots of questions and advice.
And hopefully ideas.
And ideas, yes, and come to you. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But if you can just, yes.